I spent decades inside the American military system. I wasn't on the outside speculating. I was in the rooms where decisions were shaped. I reviewed threat assessments. I watched doctrine evolve. And more importantly, I watched it fail to evolve when reality demanded it. What unfolded in northern Israel over the past 48 hours is not shocking to anyone who has been paying serious attention. It is confirmation, operational confirmation, of a strategic reality that a small number of analysts have been warning about for years. A reality that Washington chose to manage instead of confront. 300 ballistic missiles, not random fire, not symbolic escalation, a coordinated strike package. The target wasn't just infrastructure. It was the operational brain of Israel's northern military architecture, its command systems, its coordination hubs, its logistics backbone. The entire framework that allows brigades to function as cohesive fighting units. And 5 brigades didn't just take damage, or they ceased to exist as operational formations. Let's be precise because words matter here. The soldiers are still alive. Much of the equipment still exists. But the systems that turn those elements into a fighting force, command, communication, logistics, fire coordination, were eliminated. And in military terms, that's destruction. A brigade without command, without supply, without communication is not a brigade. It's fragmented manpower in a tactical vacuum. And Israel is now seeking a ceasefire, not from a position of balance, but from a position where its northern defense structure has been fundamentally disrupted. Before going further, there are 4 questions that matter more than anything else. How did a 300 missile strike penetrate one of the most advanced missile defense networks in the world? What does the collapse of 5 brigades reveal about structural vulnerabilities inside Israel's military planning? Why has Israeli leadership concluded that continuing this fight is worse than stopping? And what is the United States actually capable of doing versus what it is willing to do? Because that gap defines everything. Now let's talk about what actually happened. The Northern Command isn't just a headquarters, it's the central nervous system of Israel's northern operations. Every brigade coordination, every logistics movement, every air-ground integration flows through it. What we saw was not a strike of opportunity, it was the result of years of intelligence mapping. Every node, every relay, every vulnerability was studied. The missiles weren't fired randomly. They were allocated with precision. Hardened facilities received high-yield targeting. Mobile command zones were saturated geographically. Communications infrastructure was hit based on known weak points. This wasn't improvisation. This was long-term preparation executed at scale. And the result wasn't just damage, and it was systemic collapse. Command posts went silent, supply chains broke, fire coordination disappeared, communications fragmented, and once that happens, units stop functioning as a system. That's how 5 brigades were effectively erased, not by casualties, but by collapse of structure. Now let's address the missile defense question. Israel's layered system, Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow, is the most advanced integrated defense network deployed by any U.S. ally, and it worked. But that's not the real question. The real question is whether it could work at that scale. Missile defense is governed by math. Each intercept uses finite resources. Each battery has limits. Each system has throughput constraints. When 300 missiles arrive in a compressed timeline, saturation becomes inevitable. Even a high success rate leaves enough residual threats to cause catastrophic damage, and that's exactly what happened. This wasn't failure of technology, it was failure of assumptions, the assumption that defensive systems could indefinitely absorb offensive scaling. They can't, and Iran built its strategy around that fact. Over 15 years, Israel invested in defense layers. Iran invested in offensive volume designed to overwhelm those layers. And the outcome we saw was the result of those long-term decisions, not something decided overnight. Now let's talk about the missile itself. The system used represents the peak of a decades-long development program focused on one objective: defeating American-aligned missile defense systems. Every design choice reflects that: extended range, terminal maneuverability, guidance independent of GPS, warhead configurations optimized for infrastructure destruction, and perhaps most importantly, it was built under sanctions. The assumption inside Western defense circles was that sanctions would limit technological advancement. That assumption was wrong. Iran adapted, it developed indigenous capabilities, it leveraged external knowledge flows, and it exploited captured technology, including insights gained from advanced Western systems. The result is a weapon designed specifically to bypass the exact systems deployed against it. This is where procurement failure becomes critical, not because the systems are bad, but because they were designed against outdated threat models. And while defensive systems remained static, the offensive systems evolved. That asymmetry is what decided the outcome. Now let's move to Washington. The U.S. response is predictable: emergency aid, interceptor resupply, intelligence support, all real, all insufficient to change the strategic picture, because the options that would change the situation, direct strikes on missile infrastructure, carry consequences the U.S. is not willing to accept. This is not about capability, it's about risk. Iran has built a deterrence architecture designed specifically to make escalation too costly: regional retaliation, energy disruption, proxy activation. These aren't isolated tools, they're part of a system designed to shape U.S. decision making, and it's working. The result is a clear gap. The U.S. has the capability to act decisively, but not the willingness, and adversaries plan around that gap. Israel's ceasefire request reflects that reality. It's not weakness, it's recognition of limits. 5 brigades lost operationally, command degraded, stockpiles under pressure, and an adversary capable of repeating the strike. Continuing under those conditions worsens outcomes. That's a rational military conclusion, but it also reflects something deeper. 15 years of strategic assumptions that no longer hold, assumptions about deterrence, about defense sufficiency, about adversary limits, and those assumptions were not updated fast enough. That's where failure happens, not in the initial assessment, but in failing to adjust as reality changes. Now zoom out. Russia is watching this from a military perspective, studying saturation tactics and missile effectiveness. China is watching from a geopolitical perspective, identifying opportunities in shifting influence. Regional states are reassessing security frameworks, and the global lesson is clear: technological superiority is no longer absolute. It can be challenged, not by matching systems, but by exploiting vulnerabilities. That's what was demonstrated here, and it will shape military planning globally. So what happens now? What's needed is not another cycle of the same strategies, not pressure followed by negotiation, not reaction without structural change. What's needed is a fundamental reassessment of how strategy is built, because the current model has reached its limits. Whether institutions are capable of that level of change is an open question. History suggests they resist it, and real change only happens after shocks. This may be one of those shocks, or it may not be enough. But one thing is certain: the next phase of this conflict is already being shaped, and the decisions being made now will define what comes next.